But this is my comeback, 20 years in the making. And probably all of us have some sense of this tension within us. I remember being a very young Jesuit novice being sent away to some place to do one of our experiments, which is a kind of apostolic work where they test your fitness for the society. I was there with somebody who was pretty skeptical about the Bible in general and about maybe the Catholic faith in general. I think we got on the normal sensitive topics, maybe something about sexuality or something like that. And I said, well, we have to believe it. It's in the Bible, in my sort of simplistic way. And then he came back at me, was ready to say, to mention any number of other things that are also in the Bible that we don't seem to practice nowadays. Paul says women shouldn't speak, in church, but we let them do that now, right? He says that we shouldn't eat, the meat of strangled animals, but we don't seem to worry about those kind of things nowadays, right? So there's all sorts of things in Scripture that don't seem to be currently, let's say, enforced, but yet are in the Bible. So why should we consider some things enforceable and not other things, And so this was his counter to me. And of course, I was caught a bit flat-footed because I had never heard these kind of objections before. Whatever, in my early 20s, I had not studied a lot of theology. But like a lot of my theological questions, they arise from being caught flat-footed. So often it's when I'm beaten in an argument that the memory of that stays in my mind and forms a question, and then it makes my mind a magnet for information later, right? So, like, and every time you get beat, you kind of like, I wish I had the comeback ready then, but you only think about it the next day. It's a little bit like that. But this is my comeback, 20 years in the making. So 20 years later, I finally got down to writing the book about why you can say that some things in the Bible are enforceable, even if you can say that some things are maybe a product of its cultural conditioning, and then come up with a more sophisticated account of how you can distinguish between these two things. Okay, that's the basic idea. And this allows us to answer the question of how we can admit some degree of cultural conditioning, as you see there, without saying that the Bible was culturally conditioned all the way down, and therefore without allowing whatever seems most obvious in our culture to become the judge of Scripture, instead of making Scripture the judge of our culture, right? And so, and I think that's one of the main things that needs to be held on to here. If we can't do that, if Scripture can't actually be a challenge to us, then there's not much good to it.